Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to SP Tutorials, where today I am on the big screen today. I've decided that for the rest of these tutorial parts I'm just gonna keep it like this. It's just easier for me to just have half the files to edit and sync up in the inmix. So hopefully that's not an issue. You can see I've got Reaper behind me. If we switch over to here, the dealio for today is, it's very simple. We're going to do two things. The first is we're going to make sure that you're actually going to get sound when you play with these plugins you've installed, because if you remember from the last episode, so far we have talked about how to, install Reaper. The next episode was talking about the piece of equipment like headphones and like speakers and stuff you might need. The third part was about actually finding plugins and how the plugins work and with the various options you got there. And the fourth part was actually installing plugins and trying to get them in the right folders. But if you're at this point, you are probably wondering, okay, so I've got plugins, Well, this is the saxophone we have from last time. I'll remove that because I want to use a few others. But like, what do you do? How do you actually get sound? Because a lot of you, if you've tried to do what we did in the last part, you might not have actually heard anything. And part of that is actually because if we go to preferences and you go to audio and then device, you need to actually set the specific thing that you're putting your sound through in order for it to output, if that makes sense. So like in Reaper, for instance, I have my studio capture processing my audio. It's a 16 input device I've had for a couple of years. It's very reliable for the most part. And what I have here is I have it set up via Reaper to take up to 16 different audio inputs and output them through a range of different audio jacks. And I've got a few very important things to talk about here. Okay, so for most of you who maybe haven't even bought an audio device yet, you want to choose direct sound or wave out. So if you don't have a USB or Thunderbolt device to be able to put your audio through when you're using Reaper, use one of these two. These will connect your audio via your Windows sound card itself, or your Mac sound card, I suppose, or your Apple sound card. I don't know if it's the same actually for Apple. I'm sure that, I'm sure we can find out if you really need the help with it. But what I would personally recommend is getting a USB device like the one we talked about in the previous part. I think it was part 2. Because if you get an actual audio interface, a dedicated one, you can use ASIO, and then you can choose the thing that you've set up and installed and stuff. And if you don't know how to install your audio interface, just go to the website, find the driver for it. So if you go the name of your interface, the full name, driver on Google or Safari or whatever, you should be able to find the necessary files for it. I think with Apple stuff, you don't need to do that. I think it just as natively works with Apple. But definitely with Windows, you need to search device and then drivers, and then you should be good. So I've installed the drivers for my studio capture, so that's why I can actually find studio capture in here. Enable inputs is going to be your very first one and your very last one. So I don't really need the monitors to do that, but I've got my first and last inputs here, and those are the things that audio goes into. To be clear, so the audio inputs gonna be for instance, if I had 16 different microphones, I'd put them into each of the different inputs here. You see I have a total of 16. And then what would happen is if I go to this first track, I could go mono, rear route 1 to 16. And then that would work. Usually it just says input 1 to 16 because I'm using rear route. It's a bit trickier, okay? But anyways, yeah. So that's that. That's the inputs, and the outputs are the audio that goes to your speakers. So it's what you hear. For instance, the output of Reaper will go into your headphones if you're using, direct sound or wave out, or it will go into your monitors or headphones if you're using a dedicated audio interface. So I've got a total of 10 outs as mentioned before. So I put my first as the first out here, audio 1 to 2. The last is that. And I mean, beyond that, literally, your sample rate, I just put it as 96 just because that's the highest bit rate I work with. Some people will tell you to stick with 48,000. This is 96 kilohertz. 96,000 is 96 kilohertz. If you put 48,000, that's 48 kilohertz. Some people will say to do 48. Just go with what's comfortable for you. It should be noted that some devices can go way higher than 96 now. Some of them go up to 384,000 or 384 kilohertz. It's totally up to you what you choose. I'm going to be honest, I haven't really messed with the block size. You know, what's interesting as well about Reaper though, typically you don't need to mess with these. Some of them will kind of give you a TLDR, high CPU use. So for instance, I've got a 12-core Ryzen CPU, so I don't have to worry about CPU use, but you might need to worry about CPU use, especially if you're not using a powerful computer. So you might disable this. Just be aware that if you disable something in Reaper, you may have an issue, because Reaper might be like, actually, no, you do actually need that in order for it to function the way that you want it to. In that instance, you might even just get a more powerful computer, okay? Which I know isn't necessarily an easy thing to do, but it's just the way it is. And we've got ASIO configuration here finally. If you click this, it'll show the ASIO config for your specific device. I'm not going to touch mine because I'd probably need to start the entire session again, but that's okay. Look, that's basically the audio input output section. If you've got this set up correctly, you know, you've got your outputs set up so they go through your headphones, and usually that's 1 and 2 on Windows or whatever, you know, my output is going to be, I don't even know why I've got these on. So I've got my actual production headphones on now, my AKGs. Oh no, that's Sennheisers. That's Sennheisers, never mind. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I've got a pair of AKGs, but they're at the other studio. Sounds so pretentious. The other studio. Yeah, you shouldn't really need to do anything else here, though, if you've got these set up. So, TLDR, first is the first input, last is the last input. So if you have like 32 inputs, this is going to be 1, this is going to be the 32nd, and the same for the outputs, okay? You should hear sound now with whatever we're going to do in future. We're going to basically try and make some sound now. We are going to choose an instrument, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make an instrument without needing to use a physical instrument or a physical piece of hardware. I would recommend that you use a physical piece of hardware, but for today you won't need to, okay? So I'm going to go to Vital, which is a free plugin that I listed in the one about the subscriptions to part 3. I listed a whole bunch of different plugins from the Andrew Huang video as well as other things, and this is what you get started with. Now, this may seem complicated. You see down here, there's a little piano thing, and you can actually press the keys. So that's giving you an indication of what the plugin sounds like. You see it's got init initial preset. That's the preset it loads with without doing anything. And a preset is you can have all these different things you set, all these different things you can add to a sound and mess with. And a preset is the state of everything that you've done. So for example, this is saying init. If I was to have classic blend instead, it would be a different preset if I was to save it, if that makes sense. There's a lot of presets. So for instance, we have crescendo bells. Oh, look at that. Pretty, eh? That's crescendo bells. That's a preset. And I literally just clicked on this little thing here and I got all of these. And these are free presets that you get when you download Vital, which is, again, a free synthesizer that you can use in Reaper. I switched to Jupiter Bass. That's cool. We're making noises, right? We're making noises. Again, I'm not sure if they're good noises, but they're noises. So you might be thinking, yeah, Logan, that's great, but how do I actually make a song with this? And what you do, you go to Insert up here, you go New Midi File. And it makes a box, and you double click the box, and you get this, and it's like, oh, okay. You see how there's lots of tiny little squares? You can minimize by using this, you can like make it bigger or smaller by using the scroll wheel on your mouse. So what I'm going to do is, part of being able to make music relies on you actually knowing how to play an instrument. And I know. It's like, but Logan, how do people make beats if they don't play instruments? Well, what they do is they download samples or pre-recorded stuff, pre-recorded instrument bits that have been made by someone else, and they just put them together into a song. And they make something out of the combination of those samples. This is like the real shit. This is the real stuff. This is you actually sitting down and you going, right, I'm actually going to make something original. This is going to be you making something original. The moment that you figure out how to make your own music by writing it yourself, whether you're using this or you use a MIDI controller, which is what we're going to talk about in the next episode, you're making your own music. This is why I don't recommend people get too familiar with samples as like a bed or a foundation for their music, because The moment you rely on samples is the moment you're not relying on yourself as a musician, you're relying on someone else to guide your own creativity. Make something from scratch. That's the way to be truly original. So what I'm gonna do, you see how this is like a piano keyboard? If you don't know how a piano works, you're gonna find this a bit brutal, but basically, a good rule of thumb is, do you see how like you've got like the slightly shaded keys and the not shaded keys? What you can do is if you only use the non-shaded keys, you should be able to make something. So for instance, if I go, I'm double clicking on that dot, and that makes a note. And what you can do is you can make it bigger by going, you see how I've got that little arrow thing? You can drag it like that, right? You go like, and it gets longer. So that's fun. So what I'm going to do is, I don't like that being that long. I'm going to make it that long, and I'm going to go to another thing, maybe that one. So what I do is I go 1. That was cool, but it's quite fast, isn't it? Quite fast. So if we click out of it, and we've still got the preset here, and we can change the sound again. If we don't like the sound we go effects, and we can add the we go to the presets, and you can like change it to banana wob. Okay, that's quite aggressive. I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. That's very quiet. Okay. Okay, I mean, I like that. That's a fun one. So the problem is it's very, very quick. So if you go down here, you can see how there's like a BPM. The higher that is, the faster it will go. So you may want to slow it down to like a lower number, like 120. So if we go back here, yeah, how about that? That's better. There's a lot of stuff I'm kind of going over just without wanting to overcomplicate or anything, but we'll just pick another one. And maybe you can go even higher if you want. You can go like down here. And then boom. I kind of like that, to be honest. So that's like an idea. I still think it's too fast, so I'm going to go back to the tempo bit. I'm just going to make it 100. Probably could be even slower than that. Let's make it 80. Dude, that's cool. And what you can do is, you've actually made your own bit of music there. You've used a plugin, and what you've done is you've put some notes into a MIDI item by going insert new MIDI item, and to clarify, this MIDI item is your computer using a MIDI language to tell the plugin what to do, because the plugin's going to make a preset sound regardless. But for instance, if I was to go, if I move that note up, it's telling the plugin to make a higher note. So you've got an idea, and what you can do is you can like click it when you're out of the window and go, you can just copy it, you know, by going copy item, by right clicking and copy, and you can like maybe put it here if you want. Now it sounds like they're too close to me. We could probably put a bit more space. So do you see how I've got like 1 and then nothing and then 3? Those are the bars. So this idea, this little thing we've got here, is basically the total of 1 bar. So maybe I only want to have it every 2 bars. So I go 1, 3, 5, 7. And we'll go into why it's making the cool repeater sounds in a moment, but this is an idea. I've reviewed tracks that have had something as minimalist as this be made cool by different instruments being added. But that's cool. I mean, I'm not mad about that. I could probably make a beat with that if I wanted to, but we're not going to do that today because we're just getting started. Now, if you have done the options, preferences, if you've done this stuff correctly, you should hear sounds when you load up plugins and when you make MIDI items by going insert MIDI item. You should basically be able to hear what's being played back here. If you can't, it means there's something wrong with the way that the device drivers or software has been installed, or it means that we need to double check the situation that we've got here, okay? But hopefully this stuff makes sense. I know I haven't really gone too much of a deep dive here with how actually to make something like this, because there's so much more. It's so much more than just going. I need a long time to talk about all the stuff involved with making a beat or making a melody, because you have to think about like rhythms and key signatures and scales and harmonies and like what's appropriate for a certain mood, the appropriate tempo for it, you know, genre considerations and stuff like that. But this is a start, so see if you can do this. See if you can use the plugins that you've installed for free in a program that you're using for free to make a beat that you could potentially, no, you can literally just use it to make money off of, I think. Although you probably want to purchase a commercial license if you're making money off of these beats eventually, okay? That's effectively part 5 of music production with Reaper SP tutorials. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please do leave a comment down in the video, and I will do my best to answer it. And stay cool and stay safe, and please also remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, and your fellow producers if they need all the help they can get with all the crazy stuff going in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP tutorials. Spiderhands out.